Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to the episode of the Usagi Podjimbo podcast. I'm your host, Mike, and this is a podcast all about Usagi Yojimbo. Yeah, that's right, we talk about Usagi Yojimbo, and we are on book one of Usagi Yojimbo Saga. We are going through this right now, and we are on at the moment, we are on, we're going to be talking about today on this podcast, which is, I had a brain fart. We're talking about Shades of Green Part 3, as well as a backup story, which is a young Usagi story. We can see Usagi when he's more younger. We're going to be talking about Autumn today. But thank you for listening to the podcast. If you'd like to help the podcast, you can do so by actually sharing the podcast, going rate and review the podcast if you like. It helps the podcast grow and helps people find the podcasts. But without further ado, let's actually get into this issue of Shades of Green Part 3, the end of the TMNT / Usagi crossover. If you don't remember, the Turtles were summoned to the Usagi universe. Leo and Usagi got reunited, and shenanigans happened. Basically, a lot happened in the last two issues. Apparently, the Neko ninjas want Kakera, the magical mystical wizard rat, and they captured him in the last issue. So we have to deal with that, and as well as Leonardo being severely, gravely injured. We pick up actually with that. We see that Usagi and the Turtles, and Gin as well, they are on the trail of the fiendish, I don't really consider them totally bad guys, but for this story, they're kind of the bad guys. The Neko ninjas. We see them walking in the forest, and Leo is actually using a walking stick to help himself up and walk. He's doing a very worse for well, I guess you could say. And Leo actually needs to say, he tells him to hold on, I need to catch my breath. And Donnie mentions that, like, oh, Leo, you've soaked through your bandages, like, you're bleeding a lot, like, you're losing a lot of blood and whatnot. Raph says that. And Mikey even says, are you sure we actually really want to go on? And Leo says, we stick together. Besides, you need me to lead you to the Neko Ninjas hideout. And we see Raph and Mikey talking as they stop for a little water break. All the gang does. And we see Raph, he's like, why do we need to get this Kakera guy anyways? And Mikey's like, remember, we're the good guys. So we got to do what's right and whatnot, Plus, he's going to send us home. So after their water break, they actually, later on, they make it to close by the Neko Ninja Fortress. They're talking, and Gen's complaining about how they've double backed her a dozen times. We've been in the right place. And he's like, I think we're lost. And Raph's like, watch your mouth, Rhino. Us turtles have a good sense of direction. And in his head, Raph says, I think Leo, we're lost, right? I think Leo got us lost. But Gin comes down and ends up hitting a tripwire, which sends a bunch of bamboo darts at Gin. And I think this is Raph who actually, I think, saves him, or it might be Mikey. I'm not 100% sure because I don't see their weapons. But he actually tackles them. One of them tackles Gin, and with the bamboo darts would have shredded anybody without a shell, apparently. Shortly after that incident, they actually make it to the Neko Ninja hideout, and Gin ends up actually shooting one of the Neko Ninja sentries in the head, and we get this funny scene where I think it's Mikey tells me it's a good shot, and Gin's like, it's all in the wrist. Yeah, I'm a badass Gin. That's who I am. And we get this funny scene where one of the turtles is actually hiding from one of the sentries, and it's Michelangelo, and he pops out and surprise. He's like, surprise, motherfucker. He doesn't actually say motherfucker, but I think that's what he would say deep down inside. He's like surprised, and like he like hits him, and more Neko ninjas actually show up. Like, oh, did you hear something? And Raph and Usagi pop out of the bushes and actually kill 2 more Neko ninjas. And that was the last of the centuries, apparently, according to what Usagi said. And Raph's like, huh, why is it so easy? Like, I figured it would be a lot harder. And when he says that, they walk into the temple or the shrine where the Neko ninjas are located, and they get completely surrounded by Neko ninjas. And they're like, oh man, what are we gonna do? So, as they're being surrounded by the Neko ninjas, we get this scene where they're all surrounded, like I said, and like Raph like jumps like really, really high up into the air, and he's like, ah, yeah, he like just jumps into the fray of things, and it's weird, like seeing him up in the air and seeing the other characters, like there's a definitely like height, or like he gets some pretty good air on his jump. And he's like really high up, it seems like. Maybe it's just the panel, I don't know. It's still a kind of a cool image. And you see them fighting and whatnot. And before this, I forgot to say, Donnie actually tells the other turtles that, I'm going to keep an eye on Leo to make sure he doesn't like get into anything and like get hurt even more. Forgot to mention that. So that's what we see here. We see Donnie fighting to keep the Neko ninjas away from Leo. And he's like, I gotta lead them away, his wounds, he would not be able to do anything. And he's like, oh no, what's going on? And Donnie actually crashes through a wall. He gets like kicked or hit by these Neko ninjas. I'm guessing he gets like kind of like hit with, and he gets all these throwing stars like all around him, like stuck into the wood, which is a really cool scene. And he gets pinned down by some ninjas. I love the scene. But at first, when I read this, I was like, "Is that Donnie?" I mean, he doesn't have any of his weapons with him, so I'm guessing he dropped his stuff. But it turns out it actually is Donnie. So one thing, hard to tell which one is which because it's all in black and white. And originally, this was printed in color. So I'm curious as to why we didn't get the colored version in the Dark Horse reprints. That's interesting to see. But Leo comes through and like actually takes out all the Neko ninjas, and Donnie's like, oh, thanks, and Leo's like, oh, we gotta stick together because we're brothers. And he's like, come on, we gotta go find Kakera. And Donnie's like, I was supposed to be the one to keep you out of action, but I guess that didn't work. Elsewhere, we see Usagi run out of the temple, and he actually notices some tracks. They're like wagon tracks. And he's like, they're wagon tracks. I wonder if, they took Kakera off into a wagon, I'm guessing is what he says. But he's like, like I'm going to follow this track and whatnot. So he actually takes off, which splits up the group. And later on, the Turtles and Gin get regroup, and they're wondering what's going on? Where's Kakera? Where's Usagi? And we see that actually the Neko ninjas are now in disguise. They are disguised as woodcutters. They are pulling this big old cart of logs. And one of them wishes that they actually had a horse to pull. And then one's like, why would we have a horse to pull the wagon? Woodcutters don't make a lot of money. So that would just, I guess, it would cause suspicion if we had a horse. But it's okay. We're going to take a rest here. This is a good place to rest, Gunji says. And we see Gunji and the gang, and as well as Chizu. And Chizu is kind of washing up and resting on a rock in the middle of I want to say it's a river. And they're like, okay, let's do it. Surround her. And they surround Chizu, and they're like, Gunji, what treachery is this? And Gunji's like, ha, I'm just assuring my leadership of the clan. And we see them say, the ninjas don't. Gunji says, don't hesitate. There are 4 of us. plus me, which is 5, I guess you could say. Is there 4? No. Yeah, there's 3 of them, and then one Gunji, I guess you could say. And Gunji, they go to attack, and who shows up but Usagi Yojimbo? Not Miyamoto Usagi. Usagi Yojimbo is the name of the comic book. I don't know why I messed that up. But Usagi shows up, and they're like, oh, look, Gunji, it's the long-eared samurai. And like, oh, what? Kill him. And all the other guys actually go after Usagi. And Usagi takes him out in a cool, easy fight, which it's cool. But the main meat and potatoes of this issue is actually Gunji and Chizu's fight, which is really cool to see them fight like in the water, like it's like all the splashing and whatnot. We get Gunji actually rushes Chizu and cuts her walking stick she actually had, and he's like, now you're gonna die. And Chizu's like, no, I'm not gonna die. Did you think I was unprepared? And a freaking knife pops out of her walking stick. It's kind of like a half sword type of thing, and it goes like shink, and like she actually fights Gunji and actually ends up killing Gunji. And he's things do not work out for him today. And so the rightful heir or leader of the Neko ninjas is Chizu, which I don't know if they're all dead now. Like, do they gonna rebuild the Neko clan? Because a lot of them were taken out. So is Chizu the only one left? I don't know. But yeah, we get this really cool fight, and we see Miyamoto and Usagi and Chizu meet for the first time. She's like, oh, are you Miyamoto Usagi who aided our clan against the Lord Takamura and the Dragon Bellow conspiracy? And he's like, I am, She's like, oh, Shinji, my brother, spoke really highly of you. His praise, though, did not do justice to your skill. And Chizu actually kisses Usagi, which takes Usagi by surprise. And she's like, I'm Chizu, and Usagi is stunned by this. I wonder if it's his first kiss from a lady in a really, really long time. Because she plants one on him like pretty big. And Usagi's like, oh, what do I do, And Chizu's like, Kakera is yours. I have no more interest in him, we'll meet again. Farewell, Usagi. And all Usagi took from this whole interaction is Shinji has a sister? What? But it's no time to be distracted because, according to Usagi, he's got other things that matter. And he actually takes all the wood off the top of the cart. And he's like, oh, yes, there's a hidden chamber. He finds Kakera drugged. And I love this scene where the other guys, the turtles, and Gin show up. And Mikey goes, yo, Jimbo. Which I think is funny because obviously the book's called Usagi Yojimbo. And they're like, oh, we followed you, did you find Kakera? And they found Kakera. And then we move on to the epilogue 1. Usagi, the turtles, and Gin and Kakera are all, done with their fight. They're back at the village. And they're all talking, Usagi's like, oh, it's good to see you again, Leo. Hope your wounds heal up quickly. And as well, and Leo says, oh, it's been fun, Usagi, as usual. Donnie really wants to come back to see more of the world of Usagi, and Raph and Gin actually kind of bond a little bit, which is pretty funny to see. And Usagi says, I hope to see you guys again. And, next time, come to our place, Raph says. And they actually send the turtles back with the little creepy magical mumbo jumbo that Kakera does. I love the effects that Stan Sakai does when he's drawing like the magical stuff. It just looks really cool and like real different than a lot of the other Usagi stuff. And the turtles turn back into little baby turtles and get transported back to their own time. On Epilogue 2, Gin and Usagi are continuing their journey, and Gin asks, "Are the Neko ninjas Neko ninjas are still out there what makes you think Kakera will be safe now? And Usagi says, an assurance from Shinji's sister. And just like Usagi said, Gin says, what? Shinji had a sister? Is she as wily as a character as he was? And Usagi's like, I have a feeling she's actually a little bit more crafty than he ever was. And Gin says he hopes he doesn't actually have to run into Chizu, and he says, well, it's been fun with these adventures lately, Usagi, that I gotta go actually back and make a living, so I'm actually gonna be heading up north to the province up there. I hear there's a big bounty up there, and he asks if you want to Gen asks Usagi if he wants to tag along. Usagi's like, no, I'm gonna be traveling east. And they kind of part ways, and they're like, well, see you later, Usagi. And they leave and go about their merry ways. This issue, I feel like, was a really strong ending to the crossover. Like I said before, I feel like it doesn't go into a lot of the normal, crossover tropes, but it's fun. It's a fun thing. I love seeing Chizu take command and actually get leadership of the Neko ninjas. She's a really cool character. I mean, we only saw a little glimpse of her in the Dragon Bellow conspiracy, so seeing her more as a fully fleshed out character, taking up the role that was left vacant by Shinji, her brother, is really cool. Chizu is a really cool character. I love seeing the turtles interact with Usagi, like I said, all the time. It's a lot of fun. All the action is really, really well done and fun. I love all the little in jokes and callbacks. It's fun to see and whatnot, and it's fun. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this. It very much I don't say it really much had all my expectations and what a crossover could be and should be. And it's like the first official crossover with all the turtles, which is fun. And seeing all of them interact. I do have to say, one nitpick is sometimes I didn't know which turtle was talking because I couldn't see their weapons. So that was one thing I had a problem with in the crossover at points. So I was like, which one's talking? I know Leo is there, and sometimes you can see Donnie's staff sticking up over his head. But other than that, if you couldn't see their weapons, you don't know who's talking. So it's hard to distinguish that. I kind of wish it was in color and we saw their colored bandanas, but that's just me. And that's just a preference that I have. I love the old Mirage run, but sometimes it's hard to tell which one is talking and whatnot. And with this, I do feel like there is that as well. And one thing I do actually like is Stan's design of the turtles. I feel like he definitely makes the turtles their own, his own design of the turtles, because Eastman and Laird have really, really distinct, drawing styles. As I was saying, I feel like, he definitely makes it his own, because, Eastman and Laird have their own distinct drawing styles, and you can tell sort of which one drew which in the Turtles comics. But in Usagi Yojimbo, this crossover, he makes them his distinct style, and it works really, really well, I think, in the Usagi Yojimbo world, which is it's pretty cool to see and whatnot. But yeah, this was a fun crossover. Is it my favorite crossover with the Turtles? It's up there, but it's not my favorite crossover with the Turtles. So yeah, it's a fun little crossover, to say the least. I really did enjoy it. But moving on, we're going to be looking at a little short story called Autumn. We are going back in time again. This is a trend with the Mirage run, it seems like, going back in time to get a younger Usagi story, which this one's a fun little read. So stay with me, and we'll get into that next. And we are back with the short story of Autumn. We are seeing a young Usagi carrying some water, which is what he does quite a bit, actually. According to Katsuichi, it helps build training, or Usagi helps build training, according to Katsuichi. He's like, oh, this bucket's really heavy, I really wish I didn't have to carry it so far to get water. And we see Usagi, he's on looking over a cliff and looking in the forest, and he's like, oh, it's going to be getting colder soon. Funny that the leaves still haven't changed to the fall colors. Aki Ona, the autumn woman, is late this year, apparently. And Usagi's like, oh, okay, well, I better get back. And since I will be expecting his tea soon, I hate this part, having to go all the way back down to from getting water. And Usagi actually falls off a cliff, falling into some trees and some bushes, and actually hitting his head and blacking out. And when he wakes up, he's actually in a cage. He is trapped gets trapped by this wolf, which I don't know if we've seen a wolf character yet. This might be the first time, but he has him and another person actually trapped in a cage, and he's like, ha 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 ha, and the other person's like, oh no, stop, and they're crying and whatnot. And he's like, hey, what are you doing? Leave her alone. And he's like, oh, it's a monster. And the wolf guy, he's like, you're awake, good. I like it. They taste better when they're awake and conscious, The screams as I bite into them add flavor, apparently, which kind of made me laugh. He's like, Usagi is definitely very scared. The wolf, or the monster, I guess you would call him, he actually picks Usagi up by the ears. And Usagi's like, oh no, stop, stop. Maybe I'll start with your legs first, the wolf says. And he's like, I said put me down. Usagi actually kicks the wolf, and he falls down, and he actually jumps over the wolf, and he's like, come here, I'll meet. And Usagi actually goes after the other cage, and actually he's like, here, let me help you out, lady. And the wolf gets really shocked, and he's like, oh. And Usagi opens it up, and the woman is actually the autumn woman, spirits, I guess you could say, or god, I don't know what you would call it. She actually comes out of the cage, and she says, you captured me, and you tormented me in this cage. And we get this really cool design of this woman in a kimono, and all these fall leaves everywhere. It's very, very well detailed, and the wolf is like, Aka Ono, stay back, please. I hate the cold. If you were imprisoned, the summer would not end. And Usagi's like, Aka Ono, what's that? And Aka Ono, it says, foolish mortal, to think you would manipulate the seasons. You cannot manipulate the seasons. We get this cool scene of her almost causing the leaves to go in a tornado-esque pattern, and it's a very, very intricately detailed, and I love this picture. So much little detail in this one picture. The wolf actually gets swept away, and Usagi starts to gasp and say, oh, it's hard to breathe because all the air is being sucked out of the area. And Usagi actually gets knocked out. And Usagi is woken up by Katsuichi, and he's like, oh, sensei, oh, my head hurts really bad, And he's like, oh, you got a nasty bump on your head, Usagi, Katsuichi says. And he's like, yeah, I'm sorry, I was looking for you, you were late and whatnot. And he's like, the ledge broke, and I fell down, and I blacked out, and my head hurts and whatnot, but I think I'm okay, And Katsuichi tells Usagi, let's go home, I'm going to brew some tea. And as they're walking through all the nice autumn leaves, Katsuichi says, the autumn leaves are particularly beautiful this year. And Usagi says, yes, sensei, they are really beautiful. And that's actually where our issue ends. And this issue is a lot of fun. I know I kind of complained about I'm not a big fan of like the split issues with like two different stories. I normally would like one story or like a longer format story. But this one is fun. It's actually really surprised me that actually there was like a god being in the other cage, because I thought it was actually a person. So that was cool to see. But it was a fun little story to like break things up and whatnot. I actually really did enjoy this little story. Getting more stories with the younger Usagi is a lot of fun to see him growing up and evolving as a character. You seeing how what he started out as versus what he is now. And when we do get more deeper character development with Usagi in that aspect. And man, just the wet. I think Stan Sakai drew his heart out in this particular issue, because man, all the little details he put in to this art was freaking amazing. I mean, he normally puts in a lot of detail anyways, but like this one, you can just sit and like look at it and like just what a work of art he actually did with this one. I was amazed, to say the least, you know. But in the end, you know, I did enjoy this issue. Stay tuned for the next issue where we talk about She Part 1, and then we'll go into Part 2 in the next episode after that. So stay tuned. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the podcast. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode. Stay safe. Go read some Usagi Yojimbo. Leave me some feedback. Hit me up on the Facebook group Usagi Podjimbo, an Usagi Yojimbo podcast, and make sure to rate and review the podcast, and tell your friends. Without further ado, see you guys later, and bye.